You know, when you look at all of human history, there are these flashes of brilliance, these moments that just pop up and change everything. And today, we're diving into maybe the most incredible one of all, the golden age of Athens.
And it really makes you wonder, right? How did one ancient city basically create the blueprint for our world? I mean, think about it. Democracy, philosophy, science, the way we're taught to think critically. None of that stuff just appeared out of thin air. It was all forged right there in the streets of this one city, thousands of years ago. So, how on earth did that happen?
Okay, so to get our heads around this, we've got to meet the main players. In this timeline, this is what's so wild. You have Pericles, the politician, who basically set the whole scene. Then comes Socrates, the guy who questioned everything. Then his student, Plato, and then Plato's student, Aristotle. Look at how their lives overlap. This wasn't happening over centuries. These guys were in the same city at the same time, arguing, debating, and literally building on each other's ideas in real time. It's just an incredible concentration of genius.
So what was in the water in 5th century BC Athens? It was like a perfect storm. They had military victories, they had money, and they had this totally radical new way of running a city. All of that came together to create this incubator for these incredible minds to just thrive.
And really, it all kicks off with the stage itself. I mean, before the philosophers could even start asking their huge, world-changing questions, someone had to build a world where it was safe to ask them. And that someone? That was Pericles.
The game changer here was this idea of direct democracy. And I mean really direct. This wasn't like today where you vote for a representative to go make decisions for you. No. If you were a citizen, you were expected to physically show up, argue your point, and vote on, well, everything. Now, we got to be clear, citizen was a limited group, basically free men. But for them, this system meant that public speaking, making a good argument, persuading your neighbors, these weren't just niche skills, they were essential parts of daily life.
And you can hear how radical this was from Pericles' own words, power in the hands of the whole people. That was a mind-blowing idea back then. It turned the entire city into this giant public experiment. And here's the key takeaway. An environment like that doesn't just allow for philosophy, it demands it, right? If you're going to debate laws every day, you're forced to ask bigger questions, like, well, what makes a law good in the first place? Or what do we even mean by justice?
So you have this city buzzing with arguments and debates, and into this scene walks our first big-name philosopher, Socrates. And he's not a politician, he's not a general. He's something else entirely, something new that could only have been born in a place like this.
Yeah, Socrates wasn't your typical teacher. He didn't write a single book, didn't lecture in some stuffy classroom. His classroom was the city square, the marketplace. He called himself a gadfly, like a horsefly, sent to pester the big, lazy horse of Athens into actually thinking. He'd literally just walk up to the most respected, powerful people in the city and start asking them questions. And his method was just devastatingly simple, but so effective. He'd start with a really basic question, like, so tell me, what is justice? And the person would give an answer. Then, Socrates would just keep asking follow-up questions, chipping away until he exposed a contradiction in their own logic. And here's the brilliant part. He never gave the answer. The whole point was to get the other person to admit, I guess I don't really know what I'm talking about.
And it all comes down to this one powerful idea. The unexamined life is not worth living. Just let that sink in. For Socrates, life wasn't about cramming your head full of facts. It was about constantly questioning your own beliefs. He taught that real wisdom starts not with having all the answers, but with being brave enough to admit you have none.
So Socrates himself never wrote a thing down. We only know about him through his students, especially Plato. But that raises a big question, right? What happens when a thinker that radical is gone? Well, his students pick up the torch and run in completely different directions. And that brings us to the next big showdown, Plato versus his own star student, Aristotle. And this is where their paths just completely diverge. Plato took Socrates' quest for perfect definitions and ran with it. He came to believe that this world we see, it's just a shadow. The real reality is in this higher realm of perfect forms, like the perfect idea of a chair or the perfect concept of justice. But Aristotle, who was much more of a hands-on science guy, basically said, whoa, hold on a second. Reality is what's right here in front of us. For him, the way to understand things wasn't to look up to the heavens, but to look around, observe, collect samples, and categorize what you find.
And of course, these totally different worldviews led to totally different ideas about how to run a society.
Plato, with his belief in a higher truth, thought the only people fit to rule were the experts who could see that truth, his famous philosopher kings. But Aristotle, the pragmatist, wasn't having it. He looked at the real world, at actual cities, and said the best bet for a stable society is a mixed constitution, a blend of different systems that creates checks and balances so no one group gets too much power.
So, let's recap. You have Pericles, who builds the democratic stage. Socrates comes along and questions absolutely everything happening on it. Then, Plato and Aristotle take those questions and draw up two completely different blueprints for how the world should work. It's just impossible to overstate how much happened in such a short, intense burst of time.
And you can see their legacy literally everywhere. Seriously, when you vote in an election, you're tapping into an idea from Pericles. When you challenge an assumption and ask why, that's Socrates talking. The debates we still have about what the perfect society looks like? Pure Plato. And the scientific method, the very idea of logic and observation, that's all Aristotle. They didn't just have a few good ideas. They laid down the tracks for pretty much all of Western thought.
Which kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. We live in an age where we have infinite answers right in our pockets, right? But Socrates, he didn't care about answers. He cared about the questions. So in our world, with this constant fire hose of information coming at us, maybe the most important skill isn't knowing more stuff, but getting better at questioning the stuff we're told. Maybe we need that Socratic skepticism now more than ever.